Ed really needs no introduction. He speaks to a lot of my classes. I'm thrilled to see, and you're lucky tonight, that this is a brand new presentation he's never done before. He worked on it just for this occasion. He has gotten together a lot of his prints, and you have no idea what a job that is if you've ever seen his files of prints and negatives. It's phenomenal how many images he's taken over the past few decades. For those of you that don't know Ed, he was with Life magazine for 22 years, but he got his start here in Nashville with Tennessee for 13 years. And now he's back in school again at Nashville Tech and helping us in our photo program. He has gotten together images from Germany and on various subjects related to the subject of the evening. I've been helping him with them a little bit, and they are exciting, and his stories that go with them are priceless. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ed, and we're going to take a second. We're going to record this. We're trying to get this set up. At first, I will admit we're going to have some lights that are going to be dimming and going out in a few minutes, but these lights will be darkened, and the room should get darker as we go. This room has a safety feature. If you turn out the lights, some stay on, the batteries run out. It'd be great in a fire, but it's terrible in a presentation. So we turned them out as early as we could. We were actually turning them out as students were finishing tests. So I turned them out as early as we could without all the students having an excuse why they couldn't finish the test. So Ed, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll get this darkened as much as possible. Okay. Watch me fall.
If I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself. Thank you, John. Well, glad to be here. When I think about it, last July I became 82 years old. I'm glad to be anywhere. But when they asked me to do this Anne Frank thing, I said, well, I don't know anything about Anne Frank except what I've read in the paper and her book. And it's been so long since I read her biography, not biography, but her notes, that I forgot what she said. But anyway, I said, I don't have any excuse except that I was in Germany after the war. And they said, well, that's good enough, so that's what you're stuck with. It's not some of the things that I have here tonight are, to me, they're funny anyway. I hope you'll laugh at the right time. But not to denigrate Anne Frank at all, that these things are funny, because I was at Nuremberg trials and I heard the awful stories of the atrocities that were committed, and that's haunted me ever since I've been there. And I think it will continue to haunt me as long as I live. I just can't, well, nobody can imagine what Hitler was thinking about, but that's what we stuck with. So we turned out the lights, and I only have a few pictures, and after this thing is over, if you think I can answer any of your questions, if you have any, well, I'll be glad to answer.
I want to tell you one more thing. I insisted that Ed bring some of his books tonight. I didn't have many, but if any of you are interested, his new book is back in the tool.
Well, when you get a foreign assignment, I was assigned from Nashville. I live in Nashville, working for Life magazine, but I wouldn't move to New York. So well, a lot of you have heard this story before, but some of you haven't. I'll take my chances and tell it again. But I was recruited by Life when I was working for the Tennessee, and I was up to $50 a week, and I thought I was doing real well. And I went to New York. They said, come up there and get better acquainted. So I went up there, and they offered me $1,000 a month to come to work for them. And of course, I grabbed. I said, sure. And they said, well, when can you move to New York? I said, oh, I couldn't do that. And they said, well, I said, I can work for you out of Nashville. I said, we don't have a single employee in the whole state. We're not going to start now. But anyway, I said, well, I came back to my $50 a week job in Tennessee, and they kept sending me assignments. And I didn't know it at the time, but they were shooting 10 stories for every one that got in the magazine. And I was getting in regularly, so they said, okay, Ed, you can live in Nashville. So I lived here 7, 8 years. And finally they got my attention, though. They said, if you don't move out of Nashville to some other place, they offered me 5 or 6 cities, said, we're never going to give you another raise. And that got my attention, so I moved. But the first thing when you're assigned overseas, first thing you want to know when you get there is what kind of transportation you have. So the first 7, 8 pictures that I have tonight is me and my transportation. If you forgive me for being so personal, but that's what they consist of. And here's my first one. When I got to Paris, I said, what kind of transportation do I get? They said, oh, you got a Cadillac. I said, oh, that's wonderful. They didn't tell me what kind of condition it was in, but they said, but a Cadillac is a Cadillac, you know. But this was one of those cars that where the chauffeur sits up front and there's a glass partition between the front and the back. And the front seat is leather, and the back seat is whipcord. Well, they also didn't tell me that a German general had been killed in this thing. It was all full of bullet holes, and we had bullet holes all patched up. There was blood all over everything in the back seat. And I left Paris with, I had 7 what they call jerry cans. Some of you know what a jerry can is. Holds 5 gallons of gas. I had 7 of those in the back seat, and so the bud didn't bother me because I couldn't see it. But anyway, we got to Epernay, and this car had, anyway, it had spare tires in the fender wells on the side, I think. But anyway, we got to Epernay, almost Epernay, and a tire blew out. So I got up and changed it. I had a spare, so I put it on, and went through Epernay, and another tire blew out. And I stopped. And by the way, the Cadillac didn't have any brakes on it. And it almost had to drag your foot to stop. But anyway, just as we stopped, we got to stop. Another tire blew out. So we didn't. Most of the time that I was in Germany, that's the way I traveled. But Lee Odding got with me, and when we stopped, it had 2 flat tires. Well, one thing to do would pull off the side of the road. We couldn't pull off very far because the Germans still had mines all on the side of the road. There were signs like Burmershade things. I said mine. I tunked them mines all up and down the road. So we didn't dare go very far off the highway. You can see the tire almost blew off the wheel. And Lee said, well, I have a bottle of Calvados in the car. I said, well, this is a good time to drink it. So we drank a bottle of Calvados, waiting for a truck to come by, an army truck to come by to drag us into a place where we get fixed, car fixed. So finally a wrecker came by and hauled us in, as you saw in that other picture before this, that picture. And we went into what had been a chateau, you know, big French place, and the Germans had been there, and as soon as they moved out, the Americans moved in. And so the man in charge was Captain Clark, and we became first cousins right on the spot. And we called all over Europe trying to find some tires that fit this car. Well, we couldn't find any, but Captain Clark had found out that in the caves around Epernay where they kept the champagne. So we stayed there for 4 or 5 days and drank champagne. All over Europe trying to get tires to fit this car. Finally, we couldn't find any, and Captain Clark said, well, I'll just have the German prisoners of war put some, they had a bunch of them there were mechanics, and said, I'll have them to put Jeep tires on. So we put 4 Jeep tires on it, and they would run me for about 250 miles. and then they'd blow clear off the wheel. So on that trip, I blew out 16 Jeep tires on that trip. And when I got back to Paris, I said, I don't ever want to see this car again. Take it away. I don't want it. So they gave me a Peugeot. That wasn't much better. I just fought with that car all the time. And well, that was up in Germany somewhere. But it would keep you warm anyway because the heater worked, and the muffler didn't have a muffler on it, but it's a pretty noisy car. And finally they said, I said, didn't want to ever see that Peugeot anymore. They said, well, we'll buy a Jeep then. And by that time, the Army was selling Jeeps for $250. And they just had acres of them, acres and acres and acres. Said, go out and pick out one. So I picked out one. Had these sides put on, some GI put on there. And also had what they call a wire cutter on the top. You can't see it. Well, you can see part of it there, but what the Germans did, they would, at night, they would stretch a wire across the road just about this height. And you'd come sailing down the road and just chop your head off. Oh. And what they did was put a metal bar out there with a hook on it, and that hooked the wire, and they'd cut the wire, and you going through. Well, I never did cut the wire on any of it, but it happened a lot of times. That's me. I'm really a little bit embarrassed, not much, but a little bit embarrassed. I have some good pictures of myself. That's me at Hitler's headquarters and at what they call the crow's nest in Berchtesgaden. That's his front porch, and it overlooked all of Bavaria. Beautiful, beautiful view from up there. But that's the inside of the bunker has just been wrecked. The whole thing has been wrecked, and Jazz had put graffiti all over everything up there. Now I was on my way up to Nuremberg to cover the trials, and so I was the first photographer to arrive there. So I appropriated a great big ballroom. It's probably about as big as this room, I guess, bigger. And there were 2 beds in it. And a correspondent had come down, Carl McCardle had come down from Paris with me in that Jeep. And so there were two beds in there, 2 German beds, and the rest were German cots. So I appropriated the whole room. So I said, nobody can be in there but photographers. They said, all right. So I slept in one of the beds, and see that big stove. It was real cold winter, 45, and so I pulled my bed right up next to the stove. You could lay your hand on the stove anytime, but it radiated a lot of heat, and actually we were fairly comfortable in there. And Carl McCardle slept in the other bed, and Carl McCardle, they call him Flimsy McCardle, because he was a reporter for the Philadelphia Bulletin. And they called him Flimsy because the reporters would write their stories, and the carbon, what they called a flimsy, and they just throw it in the trash, and he'd go around and get all of them, and from what everybody else wrote, he'd write his story. I don't know how he did it, but he became Assistant Secretary of War after the That's a motley crew in Paris. Ralph Morris, the guy on the right there, as photographer, and me. I'm on the left if you don't recognize me. And the rest of them are just office people who work for life. That was our whole bureau. And this was a German band that played it for us at the Nuremberg trials. Every night we'd have dinner. By the way, I had never met Walter Cronkite. Of course, he wasn't very well known. And Eric Severide. We all just were chums together in the mess hall at this Faber Castle where we lived, and there were correspondents there from all over the world, Chinese and of South Americans from everywhere. They came from everywhere, and they were all under the auspice of the Americans, and they housed them and fed them and all that stuff. But this band, this oompa, as we call them, oompa band, played every night for our dinner. Now this is a killing wall, I call it. This is where in Paris, this is after during the war, the Germans would find accuse Frenchmen of being collaborators and just summarily put them up against this wall and kill them, shoot them. Right? And so when the Germans were thrown out, the French then would kill the ones that they suspected of collaborating with the Germans, and they'd put them against the wall and shoot them. So that's a killing wall. Now, while I was in Germany, they told me that they wanted to do the Americans had the scenery and the scenic part of Germany, and the Russians and the French and the English had the industrial complex, so we didn't have anything but scenery. And they said they wanted to send John Dos Passos to work with me, and I would illustrate a story that he was going to write. I didn't know who John Dos Passos was. And later I found out that he was one of the most highly respected journalists of the 20th century in this country. He's long since been dead. I guess didn't make as much a reputation as like Jaime Huey and some of those others. But John Dos Passos, and I treated him, I didn't know who he was, and I treated him just like I would, you know, a reporter from Tennessee or someplace. And I think he appreciated that, because I didn't kowtow to him. He'd been kowtowed to. He was sick of it. So I just treated him like any other Joe that I met, and he liked that, I think. But anyway, that's his story. The report on the occupation, and I illustrated the story. And these are some of the pictures. We got all the scenery, and you see how beautiful that is. No bombs ever had fallen on that town. I don't know what town it was. I don't remember. And the farmers were still doing their crops. And it was very peaceful in some sections. And all this, most of this in Bavaria, where there was no reason to bomb Bavaria because it didn't have any industrial stuff there to bomb. There's nothing I can say about these, but I don't know what I'm doing here in the first place. But it sure was pretty. I think those are beets. It's a cabbage, I forget which. But everywhere you look, there were beets and cabbage. The Germans just had, it was a cold winter, and that's about the only thing that they grew over there that I saw harvest. That's along the Rhine River, some town. I don't know, I've forgotten what town. Do you know what town it is, Joyce? Joyce used to live there, but she doesn't know either. Maybe so. Huh? Yeah, it was so cold, and the Germans were virtually starving to death, and the GIs army would load up potatoes and just dump them in the street, all over Germany, and anybody could come and get all they wanted. And see a fellow on the right there, I don't know if it's a man or woman, but he's got a sack he's going to fill up, big tow sack. Most everybody's house had been bombed away, so they had nothing left but the basement, and they couldn't cook in the basement because there was no way to get rid of the smoke, so they cooked above ground and slept down the basement. That's the way they lived. This is King Ludwig, one of his castles, and he was a crazy king, you know, of Germany. And this was just one of his 4 or 5, I don't know how many castles he had. He was Kind of light in his loafers, I understand. That's where he lived. They didn't all that either. And there was quite a bit of commerce on the Rhine River right after the war. And little kids were going to school, and some, I think that's in, I don't know what town that's Frankfurt, I think. These are German airplanes. They just take a bulldozer and go down a runway and pile up the German airplanes in a pile. And of course, they still had a lot of gasoline in them. There's a lot of them. They just throw a match in there and burn them all up. I never was there when they burned them, but I was just passing through, and I thought, well, hell, I'll get a picture of that. and there were so many displaced people in Germany at that time. They were mostly Yugoslavs. They come down from Yugoslavia through Germany, and the roads were blocked with them, and God, everywhere you looked, there was refugees. They didn't have any places to go. They had all their belongings. They had no. This is a Serb man that I photographed in Nuremberg, I think, and his wife. Boy, they're hardy-looking people, aren't they? And so I photographed a lot of the devastation over there. I don't know where these cities were, but I used to know where all these pictures were made, but I've forgotten long ago. I know where that was. That was Frankfurt. I know that. Because we crossed on a pontoon bridge. I remember that. And it was so cold, and the Germans, they wouldn't cut down the trees unless it was dead, even freezing weather. And they had to put guards to guard the wood after they cut it. But those were dead trees that they cut out of the Black Forest all around. And people would come, and if you didn't have a guard, they would steal the wood that's left over from German fortifications during the war. It's everywhere. There's a picture. I don't have a slide of it in this show. There's a picture back here in the back of a little boy standing in with one leg off and on crutches, standing before a building that's been bombed out. And everywhere you went, there's just about that much room for a car. I was going down there. I saw this little kid. I thought, oh, what a picture that would make, this little kid against the bombed out building. And so I looked and tried to find a place to park this Cadillac. I was in the Cadillac then. And finally I found a place to pull off and went back and looked for the little boy. It took me about an hour to find him. But if you look at, I don't have a slide of that, but that's one of my favorite pictures. That little boy is standing in front of it. It's back there, you see it. I think that was the cathedral in Ulm, I believe. It was just typical scene everywhere you turned, just rubble everywhere. I wish I could think of some more to tell you about this, but there's not much I can tell you about it. Just show you the picture. But I was in Nuremberg, and people ask me a lot of times, did you miss a picture that you really wanted to get? And I did. I missed a picture of Gary, who was on the right, on the left there. During the film, the presentation of the I can't think. Anyway, they turned the lights out. They had a film of the atrocities in Germany that the Germans had filmed. And Goering, in those days, the film that we had for you photographers was about the fastest film that we had was about 125 ASA, and now it goes up to, even if you don't understand photography, when I tell you that now it goes to 4,000, you could understand why I didn't make a picture. But anyway, they turned the lights out, and they were showing these films of the atrocities over there. And Gary took his handkerchief out and he was crying. Well, I couldn't make a picture of him because there wasn't enough light. That's one of the exhibits that they had at the Nuremberg trials. And the Bishop Belson saw this Jewish fellow in the camp there, and she said, "I want his head." And so she got his head and shrunk it, and that was one of the exhibits that they had. She made lampshades out of tattoos, and they had all the stuff there. That's me photographing Gary. Now, some of you older people may have forgotten or didn't know that Gary committed suicide, and nobody could ever figure out how on earth he did it, and we don't know to this day. But he was. The rest of them a lot of them were hung, as you know, and he could see what was going to happen to him, so he committed suicide. That's the courtroom at Nuremberg. That's the last picture. Now this is Eisenhower in Germany. That shows how much times have changed since World War II. Eisenhower was welcome in Germany. That's it. Thank you very much. That I've left room for thousands of questions, but I don't expect to get any questions. But if you have any, well, let me know. Thank you.
Dwight, do you happen to know, we went back to that, Dwight did a interesting thing in our gallery, if you haven't seen it. We went back a picture to the trial. Do you happen to know?
Like who
they are?
Who was convicted and that sort of thing? Without my list, I could get to some, but not all of them.
Let's go back to one. I think that's
There
very
were only
interesting. There were
only two people who were not either executed or committed suicide. Go back one more, or two more. Go back two more.
Let me find this stuff.
One more. One more. There was the one, yeah, this shot is labeled. Let's see, this is Hess Ribbentrop, who, at least say he committed suicide. He was executed, I believe. Died in prison. Speer was the last of the group. And this is...
Maybe this other slide would be better. John, shoot.
Go back to the bigger slide.
Come back to the
If you'll check the Ed Clark Gallery over the main building, we have all of these people labeled and what happened to each of them.
If you're interested in, while you're here tonight, if you haven't been in Ed's gallery, we have a color photograph of this particular image. And Dwight has gotten on the computer and we have labeled it with each of the persons that were on trial and what their sentences were. Does anybody else have a question for Ed before we break it up as a group? Ed will be back there in the corner if anybody wants to get a book from him before you leave. We didn't have many, I don't think. They wasn't expecting this. I'd like to see my classes or anybody that'd like to open a new show for Nashville. The show starts Friday at Chromax in their new gallery. Can't make it to the show. It'll be here in a month or so. Somebody wants someone getting poster off the wall. But it's easy to find. It's the Luby Center, which is directly across the street from the Metro Center.
No. I wish I did.
Hall up there called the Luby Center.
To whom?
Elaine.
Elaine?
Yes.
Boulevard, past all the theaters on the right, come to the light, the intersection right there. It's to your left.
Yeah.
out of that, away from Nashville.
Have you seen the gallery?
Yeah, we
I
just
guess
went.
that's set directly across from Metro. Yes. Thursday night. The show's at Chromatics, but the photo editor at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 9, is going to show
about 4 years ago, and I think
all of the famous photographs of the Rolling Stone, all the famous performers, and some hilarious stories about how they have shot the photographs, how the problems they had in the session, and all of the
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I will treasure
John
it
Belushi's
always.
picture, lots of
Right.
famous people that have appeared in Rolling Stone are in there. The poster of the band, put them in.
Thanks again. Yeah.
The guys don't
I look forward to seeing you next time.
That's the only thing that you really need to say.
Don't see real
So, well, we'll see you at school sometime. Bye.
Yeah, she knows.
What? The 18th of November.
18th of November.
Do you have any friend of ours from school?
Do you have any?
Sure.
Would you mind autographing
Sure,
one?
be glad to.
Okay, well, I see it.
My uncle wants.
I'm showing the same thing you have, you know, all the construction and all.
Thank you.
I enjoyed that. That was great.
Good.
If you're either 12:30.
I don't write worth a damn.
You don't?
No.
Well, I promise not to hold it against you.
Come on.
I had a stroke about 4 years ago, and my mind was all muddled, and my hands are muddled.
Well, you couldn't prove it by me. D-I-A-N-E.
You'll regret it the rest of your
They
life.
made some pictures when Tom was here.
2 ends?
No, we're good.
Took a picture with two
Well,
of
he
them.
can use my camera. He took himself.
He knows me already.
Nice to see you, Ruthie. We're going to get together someday if I ever have 5 minutes, but I never have
Yes,
5
sir.
minutes.
I
don't have a lot either.
I want to be,
owe you a
part of
dinner.
that team too. No, you don't owe me anything.
I have not forgotten that soup.
Good night.
Bye, Bye, Barb.
Are
Thanks
you
for the
taking
picture.
care of his books?
I'm
Or?
anxious to see them. When can I see them?
You look really good. In order to get all of them done.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were filming.
Give me about 3 more weeks probably to get it all done. Because I only have one black and white left. It's 4 hours. So I mean, like, I can do the whole. I can do probably all the rest of them next Tuesday, and then the next Tuesday I'll go back and do duplicates. Because you want duplicates are the ones that look really good, and blow up the ones, and then so it'll take me probably 2 or 3 more sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you.
Did you get the photo?
Now, who gets the money?
Thank you.
Down now, I understand.
Do you get the money? What poster?
No, give it to my
Give it to
wife.
her? Give it to the wife. I should have known the wife would get it.
Okay, do I make it out?
Glad to
him.
hear it.
Did you get his granddaughter in any of these pictures?
Nothing.
This is Ed Clark's granddaughter.
Yes, I
Ed
got
Clark.
her in there on
Sure.
2 of them.
Is it really? Huh?
Oh, excuse me.
Thank you.
Okay, you're from Washington, right?
Right.
Right.
Joyce.
You have to go over there with your grandfather, though. You can't get her just by herself.
My dad was a photographer and admired him very much.
Oh, good.
A lot of
Here?
their stuff from Life magazine.
Oh, was he here?
No, I was a photographer for Indiana University.
Sure.
Oh, good. Good for him. Thank you
And
very much.
I'm his granddaughter. I'm in the photo class.
Good. Oh, you-
We're going to make a photo of her
Good,
too.
good.
No, I can't.
Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Thank you
John, which
very
way
much.
is the
Appreciate it.
gallery? Okay.
Thank you.
Get one.
can't see it.
Okay, and it's Lindell. It's L-I-N-D-E-L-L.
Is right?
You got it on the first try. That's better than my family.
That's bad. That's bad.
We really appreciate your time. This is true.
I'm glad you.
It's almost, you know, when you look at the pictures, though, you're seeing much for this, so to speak.
I couldn't think of anything to say. I didn't know what I was going to do when I came here.
Stories we remember him telling when we saw the shows. If we see it often enough, we're going to be able to tell it.
It's true.
Never.
It's funny. He has some pictures that he took from the air at Vanderbilt campus, Peabody campus. And it looks like it's out on a farm.
Yeah.
It's just.
Yeah.
What year was that when you photographed?
It must have been in the 30s, but I don't remember what year it was.
It's amazing.
About 34, something like
Well, I
that.
think some of your pictures that you took,
Huh?
I think some of your pictures that you took of different things going on around Nashville when you were from Tennessee are fascinating.
I want to have a show of those sometime.
Good.
If I find a
Your
place,
time.
if I find a place to have them do it. I don't know where it'd be though. But I've got a lot of pictures of early Nashville.
I know, and they were
Wouldn't my
wonderful.
daddy have loved it? Oh, my daddy used to, because he was here from like 19, I don't know, early years.
Well, Ed's been here for a lot of years.
Yeah, I've been here a long time.
82, that's
I'm glad
great.
y'all came.
Oh, well, we
Yeah,
enjoyed it as
wonderful.
usual.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I haven't even seen
I
that.
haven't seen these, Ruthie. Did they just put these up?
This was in that show downtown. I loved it.
We have an extra one of these in Ed's office trying to get all of this. Yeah, that's Outburst Mall. Sister. Really well. Yeah. I'm trying to get all this extra copy.
So when you come out to visit him, we'll have to set you up in our college.
4 signatures.
Can you do that?
Sure.
Do a selection. It's a long one.
Yeah.
I wish you could see that.
Why don't you sign this to save you a lot of trouble?
It's gonna be kind of difficult getting in.
It's a long haul.
Yeah.
Easy drive. Easy drive.
That's the one we're not having.
Yeah.
In some ways it's hard because it's so easy.
Yeah.
I mean, once you get on Nashville, you just roll.
I have printed this so many times. I have
Get the Phoenix. You go through
I have it all in the box.
the
Yeah, I hate that wall too. We're getting, this wall's nice now.
You have to do.
He's still alive. He's the most patient man I've ever seen. He will stay there all day. He finds a shot, he sets it up, he stands there. And he's not going to wait till the weather completely changes. The wind stops blowing. Or starts. Yeah, I made the mistake of holding a reflector up for him once, and my arms about fell off before he shot the picture. I thought it was almost ready.